Here's everything you might have missed in Hawkeye Episode 4. For those who are about to hawk, I salute you. Another Wednesday means another brand new episode of Hawkeye, and Episode 4, Partners, am I right, is one of the best so far. With major revelations about the complex criminal conspiracy unfolding around our heroes, more LARPing antics, and some uninvited guests, there's a lot to love about Episode 4 in particular. And we're going to break it all down for you in just a moment, including all the Easter eggs, hidden details, and deep-cut comic book references that you might have missed. Now, if you prefer to read all about it, Rosie Knight has you covered over on Nerdist.com, but to talk about this stuff, we kind of need to spoil what happened in the latest episode of Hawkeye. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, then find the nearest quarter and turn this video off.
Whoa.
Alright, let's get into it, shall we? The episode begins exactly where the previous one left off, with Jack Duquesne holding the stolen Ronin sword at Clint Barton's throat. Now, if you recall, Jack was trying to outbid his late uncle Armand III for this sword at the black market auction in episode 1. And it seems increasingly plausible that the Ronin sword is what turned Armand from a man who loves butterscotch into a pile of blood and scotch. We learn that not only was Jack in the penthouse apartment, but Eleanor was as well. She reacts surprisingly normally to Clint just being in her home.
And why is there an Avenger in my dining room?
However, Jack's response calling Clint Archer is far funnier, not just because of his propensity for malapropisms, but because of his comic book history with Hawkeye. Because in the comics, Jack was better known as Swordsman and served as one of Hawkeye's mentors during his days working at a circus. Considering that Swordsman was simply called Swordsman because he's a man with a sword, this simplification to Archer feels delightfully on the nose.
It's the branding issue, I'm telling you.
Yeah, sure.
Now, it could also be a deeper cut referencing one of Hawkeye's multiversal variants like Clint and Archer, who is a mashup of Hawkeye and Green Arrow, a member of the Judgment League of Avengers from the Amalgam Comics days of the mid-90s, but probably not. What follows is an incredibly uncomfortable conversation in their living room where Kate tries to assert that she is Clint's partner and they're working together on an Avengers-level threat. Eleanor also notes that someone used her work laptop to access the Bishop security database, which makes me only slightly less worried about what kind of operation she's actually running if it's that easy to hack. Once again, Eleanor seems shockingly chill about all of this. Maybe she's just calm under pressure, but clearly she has an ulterior motive, as we'll see momentarily.
Well, I guess I'm just gonna have to trust everyone at this table.
With the hexagons and bees on Jack's mug, it's easy to have flashbacks to the halcyon days of WandaVision, where those two things united to turn our brains into a pudding of geometry and Mephisto memes. However, it's likelier that this could be a reference to Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad spin-off where Tony Dalton plays Lalo Salamanca. It could be a reference to the Golden Moth Chemical Company from Breaking Bad, which supplied Gustavo Fring's organization, or maybe we're just overthinking things, only time will tell.
What? No.
Anyway, moving on, as Eleanor sees Clint out, we see there are fencing sabers in the umbrella stand by the door. And here we see Eleanor's teeth come out just a little bit as she invoked Natasha Romanoff as a way to warn Clint about leaving Kate out of this. Eleanor asks Clint if he's a dad, but he stays suspiciously silent. And remember, Clint tells virtually no one that he has a wife and kids, and it was a major reveal back in Avengers Age of Ultron.
Sorry for barging in on you.
Yeah, we would have called ahead, but we were busy having no idea that you existed.
After Clint leaves, she phones someone mysterious and says that it's urgent, so clearly she might be up to no good. We'll see. This lends further credence to the idea that she's not only directly involved in Armand's death, but she could be one of the series' big bads, maybe even Madame Mask. Of course, as we'll see over the course of this episode, there are way more stakeholders in this complex criminal conspiracy than either Clint or Kate anticipated. In the elevator, Clint reveals that he nicked the Ronin sword while leaving the apartment. He also texts his wife Laura to run Sloan Limited for him, and as it turns out, it's a shell company laundering money for the Tracksuit Mafia and whoever's running that organization. You know, the big guy. King Watch. More importantly, we learn that Jack Duquesne is the company's CEO.
What? No.
We also see that Laura Barton is no slouch in the espionage department either. Speaking in euphemisms and German, she does her best to shield her kids from overhearing anything they probably shouldn't, even though Lila is clocking basically everything she does, even if she doesn't exactly understand it.
It's Dad.
Back at the Bishops, we see that Kate is languishing on the couch with Pizza Dog while Eleanor and Jack talk about her lifelong obsession with Clint Barton, dating back to the Battle of New York, and also Jack's apparent love for Huey Lewis as well, which I really hope comes to pass. Behind Kate in a bookcase is a bust of Artemis, the Greek goddess of the moon and the hunt, who's often symbolized by, you guessed it, a bow and arrow. While Kate remains suspicious of Jack, she can't help but appreciate how happy he makes her mom. Now, of course, with that said, her opinion of Jack and her mom may change by the season's end.
What? No.
Clearly, both of them have ulterior motives that might be hard for Kate to reconcile with what she knows about them. And if one or both of them wind up going to jail, you better believe their absence is going to make her heart grow older.
Every time you use one of those aphorisms, they're
Wrong.
What? No.
While Jack talks about how great it is to be with family for the holidays, we smash cut to Clint Barton raiding the freezer at Moira Brandon's apartment. He takes out a bunch of bags of frozen cocktail mix not to get turnt with, but rather to use as ice packs for the injuries he sustained during his escape from the Tracksuit Mafia. Thankfully, Kate shows up with pizza and holiday cheer aplenty to save Clint from one of the saddest evenings of all time. As Clint sips from a Thanos was right mug and Pizza Dog munches on some Cheez-Its, we see that Kate brought a selection of Christmas movies, including Die Hard, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Santa Claus, and It's a Wonderful Life. What follows is a montage full of frozen cocktails and Christmas cheer, which is an homage to Hawkeye #6 that takes place during the holidays and features Clint reluctantly embracing the holiday spirit. Behind Kate, we see another Moira Brandon movie poster for something called A Chance at Love, and at the bottom we see a couple of names including Michelle Moen, who's worked on various Disney films like Mulan, and Sean Bronson, an art director on Hawkeye. Speaking of Moira, we see her headshot by the door when Kate first comes in the apartment and on the fridge later in the episode as well. In case you missed our previous breakdown, Moira was a movie star that first appeared in West Coast Avengers #100. She sold her Palos Verdes estate to the West Coast Avengers to serve as their new headquarters, and she ultimately helped save Hawkeye and Mockingbird from the villain Crossfire. With that said, she was not canonically Kate Bishop's aunt like she is here in the MCU. Over the course of the evening, Kate asks Clint about trick arrows and proposes an idea for boomerang arrows, which Clint shoots down. Now, this is another nod to the comics. In Hawkeye #3, Clint is a major proponent of the boomerang arrow, but Kate thinks it's plain stupid. Here, though, their roles are reversed.
Why would I ever want to use a boomerang arrow?
We also see that Hawkeye can use just about anything as a missile and still hit his target. In this case, a small coin-sized ornament is used to turn off the TV without even looking at it.
Full of bolts.
Although he teaches Kate how to do this trick as well, this seems like a reference to the Ultimate Universe version of Hawkeye, who, like Bullseye, can hit any target with any projectile thanks to his enhanced vision. While Kate quizzes Clint about his best shot ever, he accidentally spills too many beans and reveals that the best shot he ever took was one he didn't take. He was assigned to kill Natasha Romanoff, but realized that she was in trouble and wanted out. He goes on to describe being a superhero as a game of managing loss. And while the family reunion scene from It's a Wonderful Life plays, it makes Clint a little misty-eyed. Kate puts two and two together, realizing that not only did he lose his family during the blip, but that he was Ronin all along. And while Clint may not be ashamed of what he did, it clearly weighs heavily on his conscience. It's why he can't accept Kate's praise or the idea that he's anyone's hero or role model. Now, as Clint tells Kate, as the Ronin, he continued doing exactly what he was trained to do. When Clint says, "I was a weapon," that's also a subtle reference to the title of the first trade paperback for the Fraction Aha Hawkeye comics on which this show is based, My Life as a Weapon. More importantly, as Clint mentioned, the biggest reason he can't leave all of this behind is that his mistakes are tied to him and his family. If Clint doesn't put this Ronin situation to bed once and for all, bad people could come after him and his family as well. As Clint goes to bed, he takes out his hearing aid and has a series of haunting flashbacks to Avengers Endgame, to when his family was dusted during the blip, his time as Ronin, and having to let Natasha fall to her death on Vormir so they could recover the Soul Stone. And honestly, it's a haunting way to have to go to sleep every night, kind of like how I dreamed a totally different episode of Hawkeye last night that I forgot to break down and recap for you, which, I know, the horror. The next morning, we see Kate wearing a Leica shirt that she also rocked in the comics, and this references the famous cosmonaut dog the Soviets sent into space back in 1957, who became the first animal to orbit the Earth. They decide to split up. Clint goes off to interrogate Kazi, and Kate goes to get the trick arrows back from the LARPers, which is a real sentence. Kate heads down to the park to meet up with the LARPers, who are out in full force practicing some sweet moves like Ice Wall. Ice Wall! We also see some familiar faces, including Grills, the firefighter that jacked Ronin's gear from the burnt-out shell of Kate's apartment, which is still incredibly messed up. Like, you're a firefighter, don't rob the place you go to put out the fires. That's it. We also meet a character named Elsbeth of Deepdale, aka Officer Wendy Conrad of the NYPD. Now, comics fans may recognize that name as the alter ego of Bombshell, a villainous explosives expert who we learn has that name printed on her bag later in the episode. First appearing in 1983's Hawkeye #3, she was hired to kidnap Hawkeye by the villain Crossfire. Later on, she also fought in Misty Knight's crew as more of an anti-hero to take down the Purple Man and Villains for Hire, so who knows, maybe Hawkeye not returning her bag is going to be her supervillain origin story.
He'll get it back to you. Yeah, I'll make sure of it.
Right?
I promise.
Now, another one of the LARPers is named Orville, and that could be Orville Buck, the alter ego of Oddball, a member of the supervillain group Death Throes that also included Bombshell. So keep your eyes peeled for other weird C-list villains this season because, I don't know, are they all LARPers or something? I guess all supervillains are LARPers in a way, but this is really, it's weird. Kate negotiates a deal with Wendy to recover the trick arrows from the NYPD facility where they're being held in exchange for a favor and to join in on their fun. Now, much like Clint, she has a surprisingly good time with this group of first responders who apparently have zero qualms about breaking the law in the name of high fantasy. As Clint goes to interrogate Kazi, we see another Trust-a-Bro moving van, and the Tracksuits is now posted up in a used car lot after their KB Toys location was compromised. After disarming all of Kazi's hidden weapons, Clint plays on this Tracksuit Mafioso's ambition and his desire to move up in the organization. He repeatedly asserts that Maya's obsession with Ronin is going to attract unwanted attention from their boss. And while it would be easy to assume that Clint is talking about Jack Duquesne and Sloan Limited here, they are just a shell company working for the big boss behind the Tracksuits. And I still maintain it's almost definitely going to be Kingpin based on everything we've seen thus far. Besides, after Kevin Feige confirmed that Charlie Cox is going to return as Daredevil in a future MCU project, it's only a matter of time until we see Wilson Fisk as well. And for more on where and when we can see Daredevil next, make sure you check out yesterday's Nerdist news. Back at the LARPers apartment, Clint catches up with Kate and company, and we see a D&D poster on the wall and a bunch of Xbox games, including Rise of the Tomb Raider. And what do you know about that game? Oh, she also rocks a bow and arrow, which, coincidence? I think not. As they outfit Kate in a sweet leather jerkin, we learn one of the LARPers made it herself, and Kate negotiates a different deal with Grills and Company. In exchange for the trick arrows, Clint and Kate will get them materials to make new costumes, both for the LARPers and for Kate and Clint. So fingers crossed we'll see Hawkeye in his comics-accurate costume by the series end, which could also explain why they cut that one LARPer dressed as Hawkeye from episode 2. Next up, Clint and Kate follow Laura's intel to track down the missing Rolex that was stolen from the Avengers compound that went missing during the attack on the black market auction back in episode 1. Now, let's talk about that watch real quick. Previously, we theorized it could belong to Tony Stark and help access Stark technology that, in the wrong hands, could be decidedly deadly. If someone like Kingpin, for example, bought Avengers Tower and used this watch to access hidden Stark tech inside of it, that would be bad news bears for everyone involved. Clint says the watch belongs to someone he used to work with, and they've been out of the game for a long time, but their identity is still attached to that watch. While this could be Clint talking about Tony Stark in euphemism, it could also reference someone like James Rhodes, who might have retired from being War Machine after the events of Endgame thanks to the injuries he sustained during Civil War. However, one theory that's been kicking around the Nerdist Slack is that it could have belonged to Laura Barton, because clearly Laura has some serious spycraft skills of her own, as we've seen in this episode. So what if that she used to be someone that Clint actually worked with during his time at S.H.I.E.L.D., maybe someone with the codename of Mockingbird? While the Mockingbird from the comics, Bobby Morse, already appeared on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Mockingbird could also be a name given to a variety of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Perhaps in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Mockingbirds were S.H.I.E.L.D.'s answer to the Black Widow program. They could have been an elite group of female operatives designed for wet work, black ops, and other off-the-grid missions. And if so, that could easily explain why Laura and Clint want to get the watch back, and why Clint in particular would be so concerned with making sure the name attached to it doesn't become public. Only time will tell, but it's definitely plausible based on everything we've seen thus far.
This is an agent of some kind.
Now, after Kate social engineers her way inside the apartment building and finds the watch, she discovers two other disturbing things: a silent alarm system in the form of strobe lights, and a notebook with details about Clint's family on it. Clint realizes that Kate is in Maya's apartment just as a mysterious assailant attacks him on the rooftop. And what follows is all-out chaos as Kate battles Maya in her apartment, and Clint battles someone we've been waiting for ever since the post-credit scene of Black Widow, Yelena Belova. As you may recall, during the post-credit scene in Black Widow, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, or Val as she prefers to be called, interrupted Yelena's visit to Natasha's grave. She gave Yelena a mission to take out the person that she said was responsible for killing Natasha, and that was Clint Barton.
Kind of a cutie, don't you think?
But who is Val working for exactly? If she's sending her new group of Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers after existing Avengers, things just got awfully complicated awfully quickly. After all, as Clint says at the end of this episode,
someone is hired, the Black Widow assassin. This has gotten very real, very quickly.
During the battle, there are a couple cool moments to note. Yelena's outfit references her classic comic book look with the green-tinged night vision goggles. We also see her rocking a pair of Black Widow bracelets that she uses to stun Maya at some point during the fight. When Kate tries to kick Yelena coming off the zipline, Yelena flips the script and takes down Kate. But in doing so, the way she lands makes her a total poser, something she makes fun of her sister for in Black Widow.
Ugh, that was disgusting.
We also see Kate use a sonic arrow to stun everyone and buy our heroes time to reset. And last but not least, when Kate gets kicked off the roof and asks Clint to help pull her up, it's a momentarily brutal parallel for Clint to what happened to Natasha back on Vormir. Thankfully, Clint knows that if he cuts Kate loose here, she'll land on Christmas lights and be A-okay. I mean, sure, she's gonna look like Nick Cage and the Weatherman walking around New York with a bow and arrow, but she's gonna be okay. As the episode ends, Echo and Yelena both run away to lick their wounds and regroup, and Clint tells Kate their partnership is over. Of course, we know that's about as likely to happen as Pizza Dog is to not eat cheese-based products, but I digress. It's certainly going to make for an interesting dynamic in episodes 5 and 6. Kate must reconcile with her hero kicking her to the curb, and Clint needs to realize that he can't do this alone, even if he wants to. And there you have it, folks. That's everything we spotted in Hawkeye Episode 4. With Yelena Belova in the picture, things are going to get awfully complicated for Clint Barton and company, and we can't wait to see what the final 2 episodes of Season 1 have in store for us. We'll have plenty of other MCU deep dives waiting for you on Nerdist.com in the meantime, but for now, tell us, what did you think of Hawkeye Episode 4? Did you spot anything that we missed?
What? No.
Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.